My name is Cynthia, and I'm 24 years old. I live with my parents and my younger sister Stephanie, who's 19. We all cram ourselves into this narrow two-story house that always feels like the walls are leaning in, like there's no corner where I can breathe without someone watching. Privacy is a luxury I never really had growing up here. My parents are what most people would call ordinary middle class. Dad sits behind a desk at an insurance company, clocking hours with the patience of a machine, while Mom does bookkeeping jobs for neighbors and local shops whenever she can. They're not villains, not in the way people imagine when you say toxic family. They can be warm, even funny at times. But if you looked closer, like I did every single day, you'd notice the imbalance, the invisible scales that always tipped towards Stephanie. She was their baby girl who could do no wrong. Stephanie doesn't work. She calls herself a novice blogger, though what that really means is she spends every waking hour locked in her room with ring lights blaring, filming endless makeup and fashion tutorials for YouTube. Her channel has barely any following, but she acts like she's already famous, posing in front of cheap backdrops as though Vogue might call at any minute. The problem is, she doesn't even have the tools for it. Her ancient desktop can barely load Chrome, let alone process video editing software. That's where my laptop entered the picture, and where all the trouble began. 3 months ago, I landed a massive project at my company. It was my first real chance at promotion, the kind of opportunity you dream about while pulling late nights in a cubicle. I saved up and bought a sleek, powerful laptop, my first big professional investment. 1 month's salary gone in an instant, but worth it for the specs I needed. Of course, Stephanie noticed. "Cynthia, can I borrow your laptop for a couple of hours?" she'd ask, leaning on my doorway with that syrupy smile she wore whenever she wanted something. At first, I gave in. She was my sister. I told myself a few hours here and there wouldn't matter. But Stephanie's couple of hours always stretched into a full day. I'd hand over my laptop at 2 p.m. and not see it again until past midnight, sometimes later. I'd drag myself home from work, brain foggy, and hands itching to type, only to find her still glued to my computer, editing footage of eyeliner tutorials like she was creating the next Oscar-winning film. Weeks of this went by. My project deadline loomed closer, but every time I confronted her, she brushed me off with excuses. I could feel time slipping through my fingers, the hours I needed stolen by ring lights and vanity shots. Finally, one evening, panic gave me the courage to put my foot down. I found her scrolling through comments in the living room and said as calmly as I could, "Stephanie, listen. I can't let you use my laptop anymore. Not until I finish this project. I've got 7 days left, and if I fall behind now, I'm done." The look she gave me could have frozen water. "What do you mean I can't use it?" "I mean exactly that. It's off limits for a week. After I hand in my project, we'll figure something out." Her face flickered through a dozen expressions: shock, disbelief, wounded pride, before landing on something colder. Her voice dropped, low and sharp. "You're going to regret this. Your stupid office job isn't the only important thing in this house." She stormed upstairs, slamming her door so hard the entire house shook. For the next 3 days, she didn't speak to me. She floated past me in the hallway like I was a ghost, her silence heavier than any words. A small part of me thought maybe she'd finally gotten the message. Maybe she'd sulk for a while and then drop it. But deep down, in that uneasy place in my chest, I knew better. Stephanie wasn't the type to let things go. And when she said I'd regret it, I felt the warning settle like a shadow over the week ahead. It was the 4th day of our Cold War. Stephanie hadn't said a word to me, and honestly, I preferred the silence. I needed every ounce of focus to get my project done. That evening, I sat hunched over my desk, typing furiously, the glow of my laptop the only light in my room. My shoulders ached, my eyes burned, but I could see the finish line. Just 4 more days. Around 9 p.m., I got up to make some tea, leaving my laptop open with all my work spread across the screen. I figured I'd only be gone for a minute. The kettle had just started to rumble when a sharp, violent crash echoed from upstairs. My heart leapt into my throat. I bolted up the staircase 2 steps at a time. When I burst into my room, I froze. My laptop lay on the carpet, twisted and broken, the screen spider-webbed with black cracks, the keyboard scattered in pieces like someone had thrown a box of letters across the floor. For a second, my brain refused to process it. Then the pain hit, rushing through me like a tidal wave. And there she was, Stephanie, standing inches away from the wreckage with a strange little smirk tugging at her lips. "Oh," she said lightly, feigning surprise. "I was just walking by when it slipped off the desk. Must have been balancing on the edge." Her voice was sweet poison. I grabbed my head with both hands, shaking, tears welling uncontrollably. "No, no, no!" The words tumbled out of me, broken and desperate. My chest felt like it was caving in. 3 months of work, 3 months of research, data, drafts, all gone. I hadn't backed up anything. Why hadn't I? Stephanie tilted her head like a child inspecting an ant. "Maybe it's a sign, Cynthia. Maybe your job isn't as important as you think." That was when my parents appeared in the doorway, drawn by the noise. Relief flickered in me for half a heartbeat. Surely they'd see what had happened. Surely they'd... "Stephanie did this on purpose," I choked out, pointing at her. "She broke my laptop to get back at me. All my work is gone." But instead of outrage, instead of support, I saw only calm disinterest in their eyes. "Cynthia, you can't accuse your sister without proof," Mom said in that maddeningly even voice, the one she used when dismissing my feelings. "You're too upset right now. Calm down and solve your problem." Dad went further, his lips curving into the faintest smile. "Sounds like karma to me. If you'd just helped your sister, none of this would have happened." The words hit me like a slap. My vision blurred with hot tears. They weren't just refusing to help, they were blaming me. Blaming me for losing everything because I dared to put my career first. Stephanie didn't say a word. She didn't need to. Her smug silence was a victory cry. One by one, they turned and walked away, leaving me on the floor, cradling the shattered pieces of my future. The sound of their footsteps fading down the hall was worse than the crash itself. I stayed there for what felt like hours, surrounded by scattered keys and shards of glass, rocking slightly, whispering, "It's gone. Everything's gone." My sobs broke into silence, and in that silence, something shifted. I couldn't just let this destroy me. I had 4 days left. 4 days to claw back something from the ruins. I wiped my face with trembling hands and forced myself to stand. My knees shook, but I gathered every broken piece of that laptop into my arms like I was carrying a body, and the next morning, I marched them to the repair shop downtown. The man behind the counter whistled when he saw it. "Looks like someone threw this off a building. What happened?" "It fell off my desk," I lied, unwilling to unravel my family's rot to a stranger. He poked through the wreckage, frowning. "The machine's done. No fixing this. But maybe I can recover your hard drive. If it's intact, your files might still be there. No guarantees." "How long?" I asked, my voice cracking. "Couple of days. 3, if it fights me." 3 days. I only had 4. "If I pay extra rush service?" He sighed. "I can try, but rush it too much, and you risk losing everything permanently." I handed him my card, my fingers stiff. "Do whatever you can, please." As I walked out, the weight of the risk pressed heavy in my chest. The broken pieces were out of my hands now, but deep inside, where anger mixed with desperation, a spark caught fire. I wasn't going to let Stephanie win. The repair shop felt like a gamble I couldn't control. I left the broken pieces behind and drove straight to an electronics store, my pulse hammering in my ears. I didn't have time to mourn or hesitate. The new laptop I bought wasn't nearly as powerful as the one I'd lost, but it was all I could afford with a maxed-out credit card. As the cashier slid the receipt across the counter, I told myself this was survival, not luxury. Back at home, I sat at my desk, staring at the blank screen like it was an enemy. My hands trembled as I opened a fresh document. 3 months of work, gone. 4 days left. How could I possibly rebuild everything from nothing? I started scribbling notes from memory, anything I could recall. Numbers, references, fragments of arguments. The more I pushed, the more scattered my thoughts became. I paced the room, tore through my old notebooks, even jotted bullet points on napkins when my notebook filled up. By midnight, the floor around me was littered with paper scraps, half-empty coffee cups, and candy bar wrappers. My room looked like a crime scene, only the crime was desperation. And yet, in the blur of exhaustion, something shifted. I'd been so locked into one perspective for the project that I hadn't noticed the cracks in my approach. Now, forced to rebuild from scratch, I saw a new angle. Smarter, sharper, bolder. My setback had shaken me out of tunnel vision. It was almost terrifying the way clarity came through chaos. The next day, I got a call from the repair shop. The technician's voice was cautious. "Good news and bad news. Your hard drive survived mostly, but about 30% of your files are corrupted. You've got your early drafts, some research, but the latest stuff, it's gone. My chest sank, but then a strange relief. Those old files were enough to anchor me, enough to guide this new strategy I'd uncovered. I picked up the laptop, thanked the technician, and rushed home. For the next 2 days, I entered what I can only describe as a fever state. I barely slept. My body screamed at me, my back ached, my eyes burned red, but my mind wouldn't let me stop. I drank coffee until my hands shook, ate granola bars without tasting them, and typed through the night. At 3 a.m., I'd pause to stretch, my reflection in the dark window pale and hollow-eyed, but I'd force myself back to the screen. The words flowed, not perfectly, but fiercely. Every keystroke carried defiance. Against Stephanie, against my parents, against the universe that had tried to rip this chance from me. When the deadline finally came, I uploaded my project with barely 2 hours to spare. My head buzzed, my stomach churned, but my heart thumped with a dangerous cocktail of dread and pride. I half expected to collapse, but adrenaline kept me upright. A week later, my boss called me into her office. My knees almost buckled walking through the door. "Cynthia," she said, flipping through the binder I'd submitted. This exceeded every expectation. "Your insights were innovative, strategic, exactly what we need for the next quarter. Congratulations, we're moving forward with your promotion." Her words hit me like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. Relief surged up, hot and overwhelming. I managed to smile, to nod, to thank her. Inside, I was screaming with triumph. But the triumph was bitter. I had done it, against impossible odds, against sabotage, but the people who should have stood behind me had watched me break instead. My parents, my sister, their silence, their indifference, their cruelty. Those wounds didn't heal with a promotion. That night, back in my cluttered room, I stared at the new laptop glowing on my desk. My promotion was secure, my future was brighter than ever, and yet a shadow lingered in my chest. Stephanie's words echoed in the back of my mind. "You're going to regret this." I realized then she hadn't meant the laptop. She'd meant something deeper, something she was still planning. I didn't slam doors or raise my voice. I didn't even announce it. The night after my promotion was confirmed, I simply began folding my life into boxes. The process was strangely mechanical. My work clothes, carefully pressed, went into a suitcase. Childhood books I hadn't touched in years were stacked in neat piles. I wrapped photo frames in newspaper, each one holding a smile that suddenly felt like a lie. Every object I packed carried a memory. Birthdays, family dinners, late-night laughter. And yet, all of it felt like someone else's life, someone who still believed she belonged here. Stephanie never came out of her room. I could hear the faint buzz of her ring light through the wall, her muffled voice rehearsing another makeup tutorial. She was already editing on that old computer again, like nothing had happened. My parents noticed, of course. It's impossible to ignore cardboard boxes stacking up in the hallway, but they didn't ask. Not once. They watched me walk through the living room with my arms full, and their only response was silence. By morning, everything was in my car. I stood in the kitchen doorway, suitcase in hand, while Mom stirred sugar into her coffee and Dad flipped through the newspaper. "Going somewhere?" Dad asked, not looking up. "Moving out," I said flatly. Mom finally glanced at me, her expression mild, like I'd told her I was going grocery shopping. "When will you be back?" "I won't be." They looked at each other, exchanged a small shrug, and returned to their routines. Not a question, not an apology, nothing. That was the moment it hit me. I wasn't leaving home. I'd never really had one. I drove to Jessica's apartment, where she welcomed me with open arms and no judgment. I stayed there for a week, long enough to find a modest one-bedroom across town. It wasn't much, but when I turned the key in that lock, I felt something I'd never felt before: safety. For a few weeks, I thought I was free. But then, one night, the bitterness boiled over. I dialed Stephanie's number. She answered on the third ring, her voice smug as always. "Well, if it isn't the career woman." "You owe me $3,000, I said, cutting straight to it. "That laptop cost me a month's salary. You broke it, and you're going to pay me back." For a moment, silence. Then laughter, sharp, cruel, dripping with contempt. "Pay you? Cynthia, you got exactly what you deserved. You were selfish and greedy. Karma came for you. I'm not giving you a single penny." "So you're admitting you broke it on purpose?" I pressed, my knuckles white around the phone. "I'm not admitting anything," she sneered. "But even if I did, so what? You had it coming." The line went dead before I could respond. My chest heaved with fury, but I wasn't done. I called my parents. Mom picked up, her tone tired, as though I were inconveniencing her. Hi, Mom. I just called Stephanie. She admitted to breaking my laptop. She owes me $3,000. Mom sighed, long and heavy. Cynthia, nothing terrible happened. This is just a little fight between sisters. You can't demand money from her right now. She's starting out as a blogger. She needs support. She'll be famous soon, and then she'll pay you back. Mom, I said, my voice trembling, she destroyed my work. My career almost collapsed because of her. Why are you still protecting her? Because she needs it, Mom said softly. You're fine. You have a job, a promotion, money coming in. She doesn't. It was like being punched in the chest. Their favoritism wasn't subtle anymore. It was blunt, shameless. I hung up without another word. That was the night I decided I was done. Not just with Stephanie, not just with my parents, but with the entire idea that I owed them anything. I locked the door to my tiny apartment, sat on the floor surrounded by unopened boxes, and let the silence wash over me. It wasn't loneliness. It was freedom. But somewhere in the back of my mind, I could still hear Stephanie's mocking laughter. And I knew, sooner or later, her arrogance would catch up with her. A year slipped by faster than I expected. I poured myself into my new job, earning respect, building routines, stacking my life brick by brick. For the first time, I felt steady. My apartment was small but quiet, and I could finally work without fear of someone barging in or sabotaging me. Then one evening, my phone buzzed with a string of Instagram notifications. The name flashing on my screen made my stomach knot. Stephanie. I opened the messages. Hey, Cynthia, you won't believe how amazing my life is right now. Photo after photo spilled across the screen. Stephanie lounging on a white sand beach, cocktail in hand. Stephanie in a luxury resort, draped in designer clothes. Stephanie grinning behind the wheel of a sleek new SUV. My channel totally blew up this year, one caption read. 500,000 subscribers. I make like $50,000 a month now, sometimes more. My hand tightened around the phone. She didn't stop there. Another message. Meanwhile, you're still stuck in that boring office job. I'll be rich forever, and you'll spend your whole life working for someone else. I felt heat rising in my face, anger bubbling in my veins. But the worst was yet to come. The last message was a link to a video titled Office Rat versus Free Eagle. I hesitated, then tapped it. Stephanie appeared on the screen, perfectly lit, her voice dripping with superiority. Behind her, images and clips played, my images. Old photos from family gatherings, snapshots lifted from my social media. She'd taken my life and turned it into a caricature. She showed me in business clothes, hunched over my laptop, while she contrasted herself on beaches, in restaurants, her hair blowing in tropical winds. Don't be like my sister, Stephanie said, her eyes gleaming into the camera. She chose to be a corporate slave, trapped like a rat in a maze. I chose freedom. I chose wings. The video ended with her spreading her arms wide like she was about to take flight. The comment section was full of praise, people calling her inspirational, brave, unstoppable. I stared at the screen, my chest heavy, my throat raw with words I couldn't speak. She had humiliated me in front of 500,000 strangers. Not just humiliated me, but used me as a stepping stone to make herself look superior. My first instinct was rage. I wanted to drive to her apartment, scream in her face, demand she take it down. But then, a colder thought pushed its way through the fire. I remembered something she'd probably forgotten I knew. Back when she borrowed my laptop for just a couple hours, I'd stumbled on a hidden folder. A whole collection of other people's YouTube videos. Small creators, forgotten bloggers, content she'd spliced and stitched into her own. At the time, I'd confronted her. Stephanie, this is stealing. You can't just take other people's work. She'd wave me off. Relax, I make it better. Those channels are dead anyway. Who cares? But I remembered. I had seen the proof with my own eyes. And now, with her arrogance splashed across social media, mocking me, it felt like the universe had handed me the sharpest weapon imaginable. My humiliation twisted into resolve. Stephanie had built her empire on stolen bricks, and I knew exactly how to make it all come crashing down. That night, I sat at my desk with the lights off, only the glow of my laptop on my face. My heart raced as I pulled up Stephanie's earliest videos. I hadn't watched them in years, but the moment I hit play, the déjà vu hit me. The clips weren't hers. The lighting, the background, the phrasing, it was all too familiar. I opened new tabs, searching for the original sources, and sure enough, buried in forgotten channels with barely 100 views. There they were, tutorials posted years ago, left untouched, gathering digital dust. Stephanie had taken them, polished them, and passed them off as her own. I felt my jaw clench. She'd mocked me as a rat, but she had built her wings out of stolen feathers. For hours I replayed, paused, rewound, marking timestamps, taking screenshots, cataloging everything. I created a detailed report for each creator, showing exactly where their work appeared in her videos. The more evidence I gathered, the steadier my hands became. When I finished, I sat back in my chair, staring at the email drafts. My finger hovered over send. A voice whispered in my head, "Are you sure? This could ruin her, completely." I thought about my laptop in pieces on the carpet, about Dad's smirk, Mom's indifference, about Stephanie's video, her smug voice calling me a rat. "Yes," I whispered, and I pressed send. 5 emails shot into cyberspace, proof attached, links provided, my revenge set free. Then, nothing. Days passed. Then weeks. Life swallowed me up again. Work deadlines, morning commutes, dinners with friends. Sometimes I'd wonder if those creators even cared, or if my effort had been for nothing. Months later, during my lunch break, I scrolled through social media and froze. Headlines everywhere. Rising YouTuber's channel shut down after copyright scandal. $800,000 lawsuit filed against beauty influencer. I clicked the link, my eyes devouring every word. Stephanie's channel had been deleted. Not demonetized, erased. 5 content creators had come together, filed a joint lawsuit, and were demanding $800,000 in damages. My pulse quickened, half in disbelief, half in exhilaration. It had worked. From that day forward, her glamorous facade unraveled fast. She'd bought an expensive apartment with a mortgage, confident her influencer income would cover it. Now, with her channel gone and legal fees piling up, she was forced to sell. Her shiny SUV vanished next. The jewelry she flaunted on Instagram disappeared, one post quietly deleted after another. But it still wasn't enough. That's when my parents stepped in. Of course they did. They took out a massive loan against their house, sacrificing their own security to bail her out. Dad picked up full-time hours. Mom worked weekends. In their 50s, they were grinding like exhausted 20-somethings, their lives consumed by debt that wasn't even theirs. For a brief moment, guilt pricked at me. Had I gone too far? But then I remembered sitting on the floor of my bedroom with my shattered laptop in my arms, my parents' cold faces staring down at me. I remembered Dad's words, "Sounds like karma to me." And I thought maybe karma had finally evened the score. 6 months after the lawsuit was settled, I was eating dinner alone in my apartment when the pounding started. Not knocking, pounding. The kind of fist that rattled the frame, desperate and angry. My fork clattered against the plate. I froze, heart thudding, then crept to the door and peered through the peephole. Stephanie. Only it wasn't the Stephanie from Instagram, the glowing influencer with flawless makeup and designer clothes. This Stephanie had tangled hair, a blotchy face, no makeup to hide the exhaustion etched into her skin. She looked like a stranger who had been hollowed out. "Cynthia, open the door!" she screamed, her voice hoarse. I unlatched the lock but kept the chain engaged. The door cracked open just enough for me to see her wild eyes. "What do you want, Stephanie?" My voice was flat, calm, too calm. "You ruined my life," she shrieked, slamming her palm against the door. "I know it was you who told them about my videos. You've always been jealous of me." I met her gaze without blinking. "I have no idea what you're talking about." "Don't lie to me. You're the only one who knew. You destroyed everything I worked for because you couldn't stand to see me succeed." Her spit flecked the chain as she shouted, but I didn't flinch. I let her rage crash against me like waves on a stone. When she tried to shove the door wider, I closed it, the chain rattling between us. "You stopped being my problem a long time ago," I said quietly, then shut the door in her face. For a moment, the pounding returned. Then it faded. Silence settled, thick and heavy. The next morning, my phone lit up with a call from my parents. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Cynthia, we need to talk." Mom's voice came through, weary but sharp. "Can we meet? It's about Stephanie." "There's nothing to talk about," I said. "She's going through a difficult time. She deserves a second chance. We all do. She destroyed my laptop. She mocked me in front of 500,000 people. She stole other people's work and built her career on lies. That isn't a mistake, Mom. It's a pattern." "Please," Mom pressed, her tone trembling now. "We're all struggling. Your father and I are drowning in debt. If you could help out, even a little... No. The word came out hard, unyielding. You chose her over me, again and again. Now you're living with the consequences. There was a long silence, then a quiet plea. But she's family. Something inside me broke, not with anger, but with finality. So am I. You just never treated me like it. I ended the call. Through relatives, I later heard that Stephanie had moved back in with them. YouTube had blacklisted her. Every attempt to start a new channel was denied. She was working retail now, selling cosmetics in a mall for $12 an hour, the same girl who once bragged about making 50 grand a month. My parents kept grinding, exhausted, carrying the loan they'd taken to save her. Their faces in family photos looked older, drained. And me? I slept peacefully for the first time in years. Life moved on, and I moved with it. At work, my promotion became a stepping stone. A year later, I earned another, this one even bigger. My salary grew, my responsibilities deepened, and for the first time in my life, I felt seen. Not by my family, but by people who valued effort, ideas, results. People who understood me. I bought a reliable car. I started saving for a down payment on a home of my own. I built friendships, the kind rooted in respect rather than obligation. And I met someone, a man who listened, who supported me, who never once tried to make me feel small. In quiet moments, I would catch myself remembering the girl on her bedroom floor, clutching the broken pieces of a laptop while her family walked away. That girl felt like someone else now, someone I had shed like old skin. Meanwhile, Stephanie's downfall became routine gossip among distant relatives. She stood behind a counter at a cosmetics store, her smile strained, her energy spent. The girl who once bragged about $50,000 months was now begging strangers to try lip gloss samples. My parents carried their debt like a weight chained to their ankles. They were still paying for her mistakes, their faces lined with exhaustion from endless overtime shifts. They had sacrificed everything to save their favorite child, and now they were trapped by her ruin. Sometimes, in the stillness of my apartment, guilt crept in. Should I have done something different? Should I have shown mercy? But then I remembered the way they had looked at me when my laptop lay shattered, the way Dad smirked and called it karma, the way Mom told me to calm down and solve my problem. They had chosen their side long before I chose mine. And maybe that was the hardest truth. Family isn't always the people you're born to. Sometimes, family is the people who lift you up instead of dragging you down. So I let go. I stopped checking their updates, stopped waiting for apologies that would never come. I built my own circle, my own peace, my own future. One evening, sitting on my balcony with a glass of wine and the city lights spread out before me, I realized something. The best revenge wasn't the lawsuit or the collapse of Stephanie's empire, or even the silence I gave my parents. The best revenge was this moment, breathing free, unburdened, surrounded by people who valued me, living well while they were trapped in the cage they had built for themselves. Actions have consequences, and sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is step back and let them arrive.